It's great to be back in Ponte Vedra Beach. We used to live a walking distance from this very facility. It's a great spot, great county, great part of the state. And, it's a little chilly now. I think we were having a little fun with being exempted from winter in the last storm that went through the country last week. And I started to tell people as we saw the new forecasts, Florida, unfortunately, is opting back into winter this week. And we see today, and I think it's going to be, cold throughout the rest of the week. We'll get back to where we need to be, I think, very, very shortly. And it's obviously a great place in the country to be in Florida this time of year. I'd rather not be anywhere else. I just want to contrast how we've approached certain things in Florida versus what you see happening in other parts of the country. One of the things that we've insisted on in Florida is prosecutors have a responsibility to enforce the law. And it's not that you get elected as a prosecutor and you have a right to just simply disregard the laws you disagree with, because there's different laws on the books. I mean, there's laws that predated my tenure that I may not disagree with. What am I just supposed to just ignore? So you have to faithfully follow and execute the law. And so as a prosecutor, while you may have discretion in a certain case or whatnot, you can't just exempt certain crimes from any type of prosecution. But we've seen that in other parts of the country. You have these prosecutors, oftentimes funded, by people like George Soros, and they get in, and their goal is to, reimagine the criminal justice system. Now, they can't get this done through legislation, and so what they basically do is they just decide which crimes that are on the books they don't think should be crimes, and then they just don't do anything about it. And so you've seen it. You saw it in San Francisco with the prosecutor they even had to recall. You've seen it in Los Angeles. You've seen it in Baltimore, Philadelphia, all these places. And it's a concerted effort to basically put people back on the street who are committing criminal offenses. And the successful policing and law and order policies that have happened, particularly in urban areas in other parts of the country, take the smaller offenses seriously. And when you give license to violate laws, even if they're more modest offenses, you then create a permission structure where people are going to commit even more crimes. And so you have these crazy situations where you can just break into somebody's car or break into their home, and that's not something that they think should be prosecuted. Well, that creates a culture, and it creates a situation where really the criminal element has the advantage over the law-abiding citizen. Now, we've done the opposite here in Florida. We've had examples of those types of prosecutors in Florida, and I think I'm the only governor in America that's actually removed them from their posts and insisted that we have a faithful execution of the law. We obviously still monitor these prosecutors as new elections come in, and as there is examples of them not following, then we obviously will be willing to act on that. But if you look back, why would you want to be a police officer? Why would you want to be involved in law enforcement if the prosecutor is just going to turn the bad guys back on the street? Then you got to arrest them again. So we've rejected that in Florida. We've obviously stood very strongly with having strong prosecutors. And I know it's been very frustrating in some parts of the state. It was very frustrating in Tampa, Orlando, some of these places. But we've always been on the side of enforcing the law because we understand that's what you need to do. And the other thing is who would want to be wearing the uniform if the statutes and the policies benefit the criminal element over law-abiding citizens? And yet we've seen that around the country where they'll do things like no cash bail. So, you go, you apprehend somebody that's a threat to the public. You go, they bring them in, arrest them, go in front of a judge, and then they go back on the street. And then what, like 2 weeks later, you got to arrest again when the person commits an additional offense? That's very demoralizing in terms of wearing a uniform and putting yourself at risk. And so we've rejected it. I mean, we obviously weren't going to do it at the state level. I know there was some rumblings about it, maybe early in my tenure. There was also rumblings about reducing sentences and letting people out early. And I think we put the kibosh on that pretty definitively, that they haven't really brought that back in more recent years, because I think they know it's not going to do. But, I remember Miami-Dade, the circuit down there, the judge was trying to do no cash bail. And so, we let it be known that wasn't going to fly in Florida, and we eventually were able to avoid seeing that happen. But what bugs me is, like, you can have a difference of opinion, you could have different views, but when policies have been tried and uniformly failed, why would you want to replicate that at this point? Like, those policies aren't going to work, so there's no reason to be indulging in those policies. Another thing you see is, part of it is with illegal immigration, but you'll see these theft rings, and they go and these groups steal a lot of stuff, and from personal residences, but also from commercial enterprises. And they actually had a group in New York. They were stealing in New York, all this stuff in New York City especially. But then once they would sell the stuff and make their money, they would travel to Florida and spend it here. And so someone from CNN asked one of the criminals, "Why don't you just stay in Florida and steal there?" And he said, "Because they put you in jail in Florida when you steal." And so, it shows the culture difference. But we did a huge bunch of reforms on beefing up support against retail theft. And so you go to, like, some of these places in California or near, it's like Toothpaste is it's like it's Fort Knox, like at these stores. Everything's in plexiglass, all this stuff, lock it, because people they're allowed to steal. And so you basically have to do that. I guess the businesses have to defend themselves. Now, a lot of them have ended up going out of business or shutting down operations in some of those areas. But you do that. We believe the opposite. I mean, going in and just looting a store, you're going to be held accountable. And you need to be held accountable. And that's part of the reason why, our crime rate has pretty consistently been at 50-year lows in the last couple years. And it's, you got to have good policies. I mean, you guys can do the best job in the world, but if you have jailbreak policies or policies that's empowering the criminal element, you're going to be behind the eight ball. It's going to be very hard, to be effective. So that's something and yes, I'm proud of what we've done to support people coming into the profession, people transferring from other states and jurisdictions in the profession, scholarships to go to police academy, all those things I think are very, very important. And we've been very, very strong advocates, for all of that. And I think we brought in a lot of good people, and the work is great. But if you don't have good policies, it's really, really difficult. Now, on the flip side, we could have the best policies. We could have, good prosecutors. If you don't have people that are willing to do the job and sacrifice and work hard, it's not going to work either. And I think, I don't think there's a state that does better than us, with rank and file folks, not just in the sheriff's departments, but in our police departments. You've got a lot of really good public servants. They obviously work hard. They take pride in their work. They get plaudits from the public. I mean, our public generally appreciates what people do. So that's been a huge, huge factor in it as well. And then more recently, you see things going on in the news. I understand that there's need to be cooperation when you're dealing with some of these major issues. And so at the beginning of last year, I called a special session of the Florida legislature so that we would be on the same page across jurisdictions with respect to the immigration interior enforcement. We obviously had 4 years, and we work with many of you to deal with the spillover from what was happening by the former President Biden opening the border and having 7 to 10 million people enter our country illegally from all over the world, no vetting, all this stuff. So it obviously created huge problems. The election in 24 was in large measure a referendum on that policy, and then with promises to shut it down and to reverse it. And so I knew when President Trump was taking office, you had to be on the same page. Now, we banned sanctuary cities my first year as governor. We did other things, to beef up the fight, removing incentives, like not allowing driver's licenses, all this stuff, and that's important. But in terms of enforcement, you had to work together, and so we called for reforms, and we had to fight, fight over it. But we eventually got what was necessary. And there's a number of things that we did, but the most important thing that we did was just impose a very clear duty on all state and local law enforcement agencies that you have a responsibility to cooperate, the best of your ability with the Department of Homeland Security on interior enforcement. So Highway Patrol. You have a guide trooper pull someone over. They're here. They're driving drunk. They have no driver's license. They're not here legally. That's an easy thing to then make sure that DHS is able to do that. You have people that are convicted of criminal offenses who are here illegally. They come out of that prison. The only appropriate place at that point is DHS taking them out of this country, and you turn them over and do that. And so we've worked like that, and I think it's been very, very effective. We've done between state and local, and we're